I'm Father Jeffrey Mickler of the Society of St. Paul, a religious congregation in the Catholic Church made up of brothers and priests dedicated to spreading the gospel through the use of media. Today I would like to share with you some thoughts on our patron, St. Paul, and his concern for the poor. As a good Jew, he knew the Lord always heard the cries of the poor. From the prophets and the lawgivers of Israel, he knew the weak, the widow, and the orphan, the poor person had to be taken care of, should never be exploited or oppressed. There were traditions and laws that would guarantee at least a subsistence existence for the very poor. After the harvest, the gleanings would be left in the fields and on the vines, so the poor could collect it and nourish themselves and their families. Generosity was expected to be spontaneous from one Israelite to the next, so that there would be a helping, loving, and godly community. And when the poor were exploited or neglected, the spirit of Israel would sag, and it would be a sign that they had lost their religious fervor. It would be acts of justice and charity that the Lord wanted, not the sacrifice of many bulls or animals or other types of holocaust. True religion had to do with caring for the neighbor. And there would be many examples throughout ancient Judaism and its traditions. There would be a story of a rabbi who would walk through a poor neighborhood with a hole in his pocket, and he would drop coins randomly going through the neighborhood and never look back, allowing the Lord to choose which poor person would find that money and be helped by it. There were so many stories like that. So charity from one Israelite to the next was expected. But as a disciple of the Lord, Paul took that notion to a new level. He would be concerned about the poor in so many places because he himself really just had a subsistence living. He was very close to the poor. He eked out a living as a day laborer, and he knew what it was like to be hungry, to be homeless, to be cold. And beyond that, he knew what it was like to be an outlaw, someone who would be persecuted, thrown in jail, beaten, mugged, exploited by robbers, and even betrayed by friends. So his heart went out to the poor because he himself was so poor. But he always wanted to work hard so he would never be a burden on the church or a burden on others. And in his writings, you could see he urged the disciples of Jesus to care for those who were in need. And this comes up in one letter after another. But especially he came up with a revolutionary thought, that the believers around the Mediterranean world should be concerned about the poor in Jerusalem. Now, to be concerned about the poor in your own neighborhood, your own city, that made sense. But be concerned about people that you would never meet, that you would never see, that you would never receive a personal thanks from, people who would never be able to return your generosity. Well, that was a revolutionary, spirit-filled inspiration in this great apostle's life. And so you can see in the letters to the Corinthians, the Galatians, the Romans, references to this collection that he was taking up for the poor and the needy of Jerusalem. And he did this because right from the Council of Jerusalem itself, we learn in Galatians, the other apostles had urged him to always be concerned about the poor wherever he went. But he didn't realize how important that original commission would be for him and for the life of the church itself. Now, in 1 Corinthians, we could see something unusual. He tells them when they gather on the first day of the week to take up this special collection, they should set it apart. He wanted it to be as big as possible. Corinth was a pretty prosperous city. It was a boom town. And all the while he had worked in the ministry without asking for any special pay or recompense. And so some Corinthians, although they were disciples of Jesus, they'd accepted Christ as their Savior, they were a part of the church, they still were suspicious. How could Paul live like that? And they thought, he's going to take this collection and use it for himself. He got wind of that, and we see in 1 Corinthians where he says, listen, when I come to get the collection, you can pick people to deliver it to Jerusalem. I won't even touch the money. They could bring it. If you want me to go with them, fine. I won't even get credit for it. But we need to help the poor people of Jerusalem. He shamed them into saying, okay, he's not in it for the money or to run away with the collection. But this gives us a good principle in church administration today. The whole community, a number of people, should know what's happening to the money and should be able to control it so that no one could succumb to temptation to take the money and misuse it. A very good principle. But this notion of helping people that you'd never see, that was revolutionary. And it is at the basis of so many Catholic and Christian charities to this very day. Overseas relief in so many ways is inspired by this attitude of Paul. And then the lay organizations like the St. Vincent de Paul Society that have lay people helping lay people in trouble who are poor and destitute. Catholic charities in all of its forms, Vatican charities in all of its manifestations, all can take inspiration from the first century apostle St. Paul and his concern for the poor of Jerusalem. And this rebounded to his credit and the credit of the believing community as a whole. When he's put on trial in Jerusalem, he tells the governor, I came here to give alms. And one of the most powerful messages to the world when they criticize the church is that the church is a loving community that cares for the poor and the needy everywhere. And this is a powerful sign that God is alive and well in the believing community. Now, St. Paul, who understood the suffering of the poor because he was poor himself, also relied on the generosity of the well-to-do, those who had some means to share with others, and his gratitude towards them was great indeed. But he knew they would be rewarded not by Paul, but by the Lord of life, who taught Paul how to live, who taught Paul how to love, and who filled Paul with the Spirit to bring this message of love and generosity to the world. That was the secret of that great saint. And that's the secret of any vibrant, believing community to this very day. We trust in the Lord, who hears the cry of the poor and encourages us to be messengers of love to the poor community, and when poor ourselves, to accept the generosity of others with a sense of gratitude. This powerful reality affects the world to this very day. The church is filled with countless good Samaritans, and you and I are called to be the helping person to anyone in need who crosses our path and to those in need that we'll never see personally. May God give you a generous, cheerful heart.